legitimize. A bastard recently legitimized by King Tommen. Indoor. A bit nippy. Yeah. By the fire. Indoors. Shabby. A bit shabby, isn't it? Stylist. A brilliant stylist who invented half the stories he tells. Identity. A captive knight has a right to know his captor's identity. Seasoned. A child with two seasoned warriors counseling her. Motto. A common saying, but not their official motto. Simpleton. A crippled boy being pulled on a sledge by a simpleton? Prance. A dancing king, prancing down his blood-stained halls. Destitute. A destitute woman and her small child. Dinghy. A dinghy will be waiting for you. Disturbing. A disturbing thought. Drinker. A drinker's liver if ever I saw one. Repayment. A fair enough repayment for putting your spear. Falcon. A falcon. Trait. A family trait. Bum. A finger in the bum? Admittedly. A fool's task. Admittedly. Underway. A foreign invasion is underway. Gape. A gaping pit waiting to swallow us all. Ingredient. A good kidney pie is all about the ingredients. Batter. A good ram will batter it down in minutes. Minor. A grasper from a minor house with a major talent. Lump. A great doughy lump I'd sat next to. Lumber. A great lumbering beast. Sadness. A great sadness to all of us. Harmless. A harmless courtesy. Your grace. Legion. A legion of unsullied and 3 dragons. Lioness. A lioness guarding her cub. Cramp. A little cramped, perhaps. Citadel. A maester of the citadel. Chained and sworn. Moral. A man with great ambition and no morals. Mockingbird. A mockingbird. Plumber. A most high-born plumber. Poem. A poem actually. Tome. A ponderous tome. Costly. A rare and costly thing. Salmon. A red salmon. Corrupt. A scheme devised by corrupt rulers. Eradicate. A servant who does not wish to see its traditions eradicated. Sham. A sham marriage. Shard. A shard of dragonglass plunged into your heart. Defensive. A smart commander does not abandon a defensive advantage. Spectacle. A spectacle for the locals. Student. A student of history. Are you? Substantial. A substantial case against you. Courtship. A successful courtship would make Lord Baelish. Ledger. A surprising place to keep the royal ledgers. Symbolic. A symbolic revenge of sorts. Wane. A title whose importance wanes with each passing day. Class. A touch of class. Challenger. A true champion defeats all the challengers. Avail. A true leader avails himself of the wisest counsel he can. Effective. A very effective and efficient man. Efficient. A very effective and efficient man. Talon. A vulture grasping a baby in its talons. House Blackmont. Salve. A wife salves her husband's wounds. Ably. Ably. Salutary. About the salutary effects of brothels. Commitment. About your commitment to this family's future. Frailty. Accepting our human frailty. Embarrass. Afraid I'd embarrass our family in front of the family. Consultation. After a long consultation with my colleague Sir Bronn. Running. After all the running and fighting here I am. Confer. After conferring with His Holiness the High Septon. Temporary. Again. Only temporary. Vintner. Ah, the vintners say this might be. Eastern. Ah. The Eastern Road. Hovel. Ah. Yes. I visited their hovels. Salesman. A smith and a salesman. Banquet. All he laid siege to was the banquet table in the command tent. Footwork. All right. Let's start with your footwork. Competitor. All the competitors were done. Thoroughfare. All the major thoroughfares. Esteem. I still carry a token of his esteem. Valiant. Alongside his valiant brothers in arms. Flaw. Among their many flaws have another. Inaccurate. Inaccurate in this case. Uncommon. an uncommon name here. Mart, an unsullied must go to the slave marts with a silver mark. Unattractive, and a lot of very unattractive people. Repel, and a million men would have been repelled. Whetstone, and a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. Mug, and a mug of dark beer to wash it down. Raspberry, and a nice bowl of raspberries. 2. Unrepentant, and an unrepentant sinner. Parting, and as a parting gift to our honored guests. Align, and as you say, our interests are aligned. Benevolent, and benevolent enslavers of Volantis? Calf, and calf's kidneys is not easy. Mite, and careful of the paper mites. Cistern, and cisterns in Casterly Rock. Melon, and crush the high sparrow's head like a melon. Garlic, and cum and garlic and rum. Deformity, and deformity. Barge, and each one of your gold barges is worth half a kingdom. Cursed, and every other tragedy that has befallen their cursed country. Exact, and for 600 years they have never failed to exact their toll. Rehearse, and go rehearse our wedding night. Sprout, and gray hairs will sprout from your ears. Sleeve, and green brocade with fringed sleeves. Garret, and had them carted back to your garret. Crouch, and he crouched behind it and crept forward. Defender, and he's been a defender of the watch and the wall almost all of his life. Accelerate, and help them accelerate this process. Spring, and her kisses were warmer than spring. Descent, and his efforts to stamp out dissent. Wary, and his recent experience has made him wary of long engagements. Chat, and how come he always gets to sit and chat? Foremost, and I am their foremost servant in this world. Fountain, and I drank the water from his fountain. Acknowledge, and I have acknowledged that. Paddle, and I keep on paddling. Clarity, and I saw it with perfect clarity. Maggot, and I would let myself be consumed by maggots. Beholden, and I'm not beholden to my ancestors' vows. Picking, and if any thieves came looking for easy pickings. Earnest, and if my people aren't south of the wall when it comes in earnest. Fend, and let the rest of the city fend for itself. Ludicrous, and ludicrous silver hair. Landmark, and maintenance of its greatest landmarks. Marble, and marbled. Mow, and mowing down tired, outnumbered Baratheons. Lying, and no lying. Avert, and now, how to avert disaster with our current predicament. Purge, and only confession can purge sin. Profess, and profess your guilt or innocence before the seven. Dowry, and promised me the girl's weight in silver as a dowry. Forage, and send out a foraging party immediately. Summary, and sent me back up north for a summary execution. Execution, and sent me back up north for a summary execution. Ambassador, and serve as my ambassador to Yunkai. Godless, and set the godless on the run. Absent, and she is absent anyway. Coal, and shoved his face into the burning coals. Blush, and since you can't talk about it without blushing. Slump, and slump into a heap of nothing. Stupor, and soon we fell into a stupor. Henceforth, and that henceforth I shall do nothing without her consent. Outstanding, and the current arithmetic is outstanding. Dent, and the dent in your shield when you handed it back to me. Winner, and the Iron Bank wants to bet on a winner. Regularly, and the king has been speaking regularly. Respite, and the lowly a respite from their woes. Moat, and the moats are filled with blackberry wine. Explanation, and the simplest explanation. Underlying, and the underlying region treated with some sort of unguent. Region, and the underlying region treated with some sort of unguent. Unguent, and the underlying region treated with some sort of unguent. Wording, and the wording of this oath. Wrestling, and the wrestling, changed. Sprinkle, and then when you're finished, you sprinkle them over the pea crust. Thrive, and they will thrive by her side. Impress, and this is supposed to impress me? Authentic. And this news could be authentic. Humility. And to teach me humility, the gods have condemned me. Affiliation. And Tyrell's thanks to our new affiliation. Squabble. And we're squabbling amongst ourselves. Establish. And we've established the rules about lying? Secretly. And what boy doesn't secretly wish for hidden powers? Entail. And what does the mother's mercy entail? Flap. And wherever they are, just a few flaps of their wings. Sadden. And while that saddens me greatly, greatly, and while that saddens me greatly, colored, and whose ship had sails of colored silk? Surname. And why is my surname Snow? Disappearance. And with my wife's disappearance it makes me seem that much more guilty. Smother. And women smothered their babies. Youth. And you are still blessed with youth. Heroism. And you deserve a proper reward for your heroism. Chastise. And you sit beside this pretender and chastise me. Cleaver. And you were good with the cleaver. Whine. And you whine and cry and quit. Stepfather. And you will be the king's stepfather. Dolt. And you're loyal to Sansa and her dolt brother. Illness. And you're quite certain he died of a natural illness? Maneuver. And you've learned to maneuver from the very best. Thug. And your gold-plated thugs just gave them their rallying cry. Criticize. And your wife has every right to criticize. Lash. Angry snakes lash out. Appease. Appease. Nocturnal. Are details of your grandson's nocturnal activities. Mutually. Are the two mutually exclusive in your experience? Expressly. Are you expressly forbidden from standing down? Macabre. Are you sure Lady Marjorie doesn't find all this a bit macabre? Armored. Armored and mounted. Troop. As a boy I traveled with a troupe of actors. Whiff. As a whiff of treason from any of the rest. Veiled. As for your veiled threats. Sunshine. As much as I appreciate a walk in the sunshine, your lordship. Senior. As one of the senior lords in the country. Servitude. As payment for their years of servitude. Bookkeeper. At finding nothing but a browbeaten bookkeeper. Blaze. At night they see fires blazing in the mountains. Transcribe. At the citadel I transcribed a High Septon's diary. Slither. At the Eyrie or wherever he's slithering about. Bearing. At the stone mill which may have some bearing. Clarification. At Winterfell for clarification. Reset. Reset. Baby. Baby dragons. Outdoors. Bad night to be outdoors. Quicksand. Bargaining with oath-breakers is like building on quicksand. Meddle. Bastard's been meddling where he shouldn't. Poisonous. Beautiful but poisonous. Necessity. Because he understood the necessity of working with one's rivals. Hopeful. Because he's hopeful for a successful military alliance. Zealot. Before that shoeless zealot throws me into one of his cells. Shocked. Believe me, no one is more shocked than I am. Incense. Beneath the incense and the perfume. Where? Beside. Is it a poor wine merchant who drink up his own wares? Upkeep. Besides, think of the upkeep. Amputation. Better at amputations, I'm afraid. Claimant. Better claimants to the throne than Cersei's children. Quandary. Bit of a quandary for you. Bitterly. Bitterly. Boom. Boom. Mallet. Break them with a mallet. Briefly. Briefly. Olive. Bring him a shaved goat and a bottle of olive oil. Carving. Bring the bird over here and the carving knife. Fornicate. Brother fornicates with sister in the bed of kings. But an attack from the air with dragon fire. Researcher. But an excellent researcher. Shrubbery. But apparently the shrubbery does too. Doubtless. But doubtless the Greek gin only meant to cut my meat for me. Outmaneuver. But even the most dangerous men can be outmaneuvered. Upright. But I can't really hold it upright. Contact. But if a single drop makes contact with the skin. Enlist. But if you can't understand why I won't enlist my people, largely, but influence is largely a matter of patience I have found. Poke. But it can poke him full of holes if you're quick enough. Overreach. But like all upstarts, you overreach. Overpower. But maybe you wished one of them could overpower you. Importantly. But more importantly, we need allies. Treatment. But my treatment of the masters was no crime. Misstep. But one misstep. Significance. But one of great significance to you. Echo. But our war cries will echo through eternity. Belt. But say another word and I will belt you. Bale. But she can't lift a bale of hay. Solely. But solely for the benefit of the family? Usher. But sometimes before we can usher in the new. Vice. But sternness in defense of the realm is no vice. Rebirth. But the rebirth of Myrene is the cause of this violence. Fabrication. But the tales of the long night can't be pure fabrication. Disdain. But they disdained the game and those who played. Tray. But they're all a tray of cakes next to death. Contend. But we still have us to contend with. Outshine. But when she speaks of you, the mother's love outshines it all. Redefine. But you appear to be redefining those terms entirely. Gloat. But you don't gloat over it. Overdo. But young men with big jobs, they tend to overdo them. Laboratory. But your grace, this is my laboratory. Ivory. But yours will be ivory since you're the bride. Austerity. By the time you were born your father's austerity had become hers. Brute. Calm a man's brute nature. Bellow. Calm as ever the captain bellows. Iced. Can I get you some iced milk? Toe. Can stand on one toe for hours. Intercept. Can't risk Ramsay intercepting it. Custard. Candied almonds custard. Plum. Candied plums from Dorn. Carrion. Carrion for vultures rotting in the sun. Categorically. Categorically. Pregnancy. Cersei told me the pregnancy had changed her. Blanket. Change his sheets and blankets daily. Chapter 3, verse 12. Governance. Charged with the governance and protection of Qarth. Charitable. Charitable work before. Rigid. Charmless. Rigid. A bore. Yes. Chieftain. Chieftain of the Stone Crows. Blameless. Children are blameless. Clog. Clogged from balls to brains. Collectively. Collectively. You control more spies and informants. Informant. Collectively, you control more spies and informants. Sweetness. Come here, sweetness. Trained. Well trained and well provisioned. Blockade. Commit to the blockade of King's Landing. Comport. Comport yourself with dignity at the Vale. Perjury. Concerning buggery and perjury. Resistance. Conquerors always meet with resistance. Conveniently. Conveniently close to your own quarters. Copious. Copious details. Tulip. Could hardly escape the little tulip. Vial. Could you bring me that vial over there? Tap. Craster will tap a barrel of our wine. Crescent. Crescent moons and starbursts. Squeak. Dead rats don't squeak. Descent. Descent from the children of the forest. Reprieve. Did he plead for a reprieve? Misrepresent. Did I misrepresent my intentions? Ablaze. Did I set your ships ablaze? Rack. Did they put you in a rack? An. Remotely. Did you ever do anything remotely related to combat? Fondle. Did you fondle one boy too many? Overhead. Did you see 3 dragons flying overhead when you arrived? School. Didn't they teach you that at fancy lads' school? Broke. Didn't think a broke foot could kill a man. Puff. What? In a puff of smoke. Disgraceful. Disgraceful. Insulting. Dismissing him was as insulting as it was stupid. Precise. Do you remember the precise nature of this threat? Garland. Do you think I demanded a garland of roses? Coincidence. Do you think it's a coincidence? Outcome. Do you think the king will be angry at the outcome? Poverty. Do you think the path from poverty to wealth? Resume. Do you wish to resume your captivity? Candidate. Does anyone wish to speak for candidates? Thinking. Does half your thinking? Kite. Does he drift away like a kite with his strings caught? Jaunt. Does he have a little jaunt in his step? Belittle. Doesn't sit well with some, so they belittle me. Dolphin. Dolphins maybe. Coy. Don't be coy with me, you little whore. Lifestyle. Don't enjoy the same lifestyle as our counterparts in Dorne. Counterpart. Don't enjoy the same lifestyle as our counterparts in Dorne. Prophet. Don't forget the prophet Lotus. Terrified. Don't look so terrified. Fuss. Don't see what all the fuss is about. Heathen. Dothraki heathens who will burn your villages to the ground. Downward. Downwards from his horse did limp. Epaulet. Dragon epaulets. Partnership. Dragons are where our partnership ends. Goddamn. Drink the goddamn ale. Tenure. During your brief tenure as hand. Indulge. Each time I indulged. Distinctly. Earlier today, I distinctly recall. Moss. Eat something that isn't moss. Yolk. Egg yolks. Turpentine. Oil of roses. Overwhelm. Enough to overwhelm what remains of my household guard. Attractive. Envy isn't attractive. Apartment. Escort them back to the royal apartments. Eternally. Eternally at war. Lunatic. Even if he's serving a drunk or a lunatic. Inadvisable. Even if I wanted to do such an inadvisable thing. Apothecary. Every healer, every apothecary. Cooking. Every man who has tasted my cooking. Series. Every possible series of events is happening all at once. Sheltered. Every village or sheltered place will be deserted. Applaud. Everyone applauded his reforms. Couch. Everyone else was asleep on the couches or on the floor. Preference. Everyone has a preference. Funniest. Everyone laughed like it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Fondness. Everyone's well aware of your enduring fondness. Evidently. Evidently not. Normally. Except someone normally cares what happens to cargo. Extricate. Extricating Sansa getting her here alive. Loser. Fabled loser of the Battle of Whispering Wood. Baron. Phallice is 40 and Baron. Fame. Famed for their skills at archery, navigation and lovemaking. Navigation. Famed for their skills at archery, navigation and lovemaking. Lovemaking. Famed for their skills at archery, navigation and lovemaking. Hinder. Far be it from me to hinder true love. Discriminate. Father doesn't discriminate. Drone. Father droned on about the family legacy. Careless. Father got careless. Fawn. Fawning over the Lady Arryn. Standstill. Fear has brought me Reen to a standstill. Indefinitely. Feed your men and the wildling prisoners indefinitely. 50. 50? Acre. Find those boys and I'll give you 1,000 acres and a holdfast. Ornamentation. Fine leather. Ornamentation. Demolish. First you must demolish the old one. Flask. Flask. Mobility. Flogging stragglers has a marked effect on mobility. Flour. Flour, lard, water, eggs, milk. Lard. Flour, lard, water, eggs, milk. Foam. Foam and bile spilling from my mouth. Bile. Foam and bile spilling from my mouth. Font. Font of mercy. Strangely. For a man of the world. You're strangely naive. Naive. For a man of the world. You're strangely naive. Decade. For decades House Lannister has been the true power in Westeros. Retaliate. For him to retaliate just dropped drastically. Drastically. For him to retaliate just dropped drastically. Grudge. For men in our position. Holding grudges can be an encumbrance. Distant. For the actions of every distant relative. Occupant. For the current occupants of the castle. Sustenance. For their sustenance and support. Ingenuity. For your good service and ingenuity. Grading. For your grating obsession with the White Walkers. Obsession. For your grating obsession with the White Walkers. Dignitary. Foreign dignitary. Falsely. Foully. Falsely slain. Vi. 4 kings vying for the throne. Element. Freeing the crown from elements. Navel. From navel to collarbone. Flowery. From some flowery seed in the south. Remake. From the fire she was reborn to remake the world. Ring. Wring their hands over the way she built it. Cunning. Full of envy, lust, and low cunning. Furthermore, after much prayer and reflection. Thumb. General rule of thumb. Tipper. Generous tipper. Specialize. Jenna specializes in first-timers. Paragon. Get a message to this paragon of yours. Appalling. You look appalling. Wig. Get the wig. Skiff. Get to the skiff. Morsel. Give me a morsel. Rabble. Give the order and we'll clear out this rabble. Beating. Give this a good beating. Legitimacy. Gives him more legitimacy in the north. Regal. Giving up your regal responsibilities. Jeweler. Go and speak to the jewelers of King's Landing. Shear. Go on. Tommy. Shear him good. Upstairs. Go upstairs. Jailer. Good prisoners breed good jailers. Apparently. Chap. Good to see the old chap still guarding the harbor. Thunderbolt. Got thunderbolts on his shield. Barricade. Guard the barricades. Habit. Sympathetic. Had made him more sympathetic to the northern cause. Span. Had somehow acquired all 3 in a very short span of time. Rye. 500,000 bushels each of barley, oats and rye. Core. Has been the core of every peaceful overture. Has made overtures to the Golden Company in Essex. Bloat. Has she started to bloat? Suddenly. Has the crown suddenly stopped needing conception? Have any conception what his actual family was doing? Penitent. And live his life as a penitent. Clue. Haven't a clue. Annul. He annulled Rieger's marriage to Alia. Unparalleled. He called your experience and wisdom in financial matters unparalleled. Unnamed. He can be unnamed. Decry. He decried it as a criminal act but was overruled. Overrule. He decried it as a criminal act but was overruled. Gladden. He didn't seem gladdened by the news. Abide. He does have a deep, abiding lust for her money. Entrust. He entrusts some small matters to us. Failed. He gave a failed, drunk priest. Birthmark. He has a birthmark, your grace. Competent. He has become a competent swordsman. Talkative. He hasn't been very talkative these last 20 years. Utterly. He is a proven battle commander and he is utterly without mercy. Hawk. He managed to ride off a cliff whilst talking. Intervene. He might have to intervene. Procure. He procured them for me. Sigh. He wrote to a woman's sigh. Splinter. He sent a splinter force. Palsy. He swings a sword like a girl with palsy. Dismissal. He took his dismissal from the king's guard. Engaged. He was engaged to my sister. Fatherly. He was overcome with fatherly love. Reel. He was reeling from the wine. Lizard. He was scaled like a lizard. Preoccupied. He was too preoccupied to notice. Invaluable. He'd be invaluable at the wall. Tried. He's a tried and tested battle commander. Distinguished. He's enjoyed a distinguished military career. Bolster. He's hired thousands of foreign sellswords to bolster his army. Prime. He's in his prime. Overconfident. He's overconfident. Talented. He's quite talented. You know? Worse. He's borrowing it. Splendid. He's such a splendid fighter. Temperate. He's temperate and measured. Investigation. He's under investigation himself. Swell. Her belly start to swell. Invulnerable. Her dragons might not be as invulnerable as some think. Pleasing. Her face is quite pleasing. Seep. Her panic seeps into her meat. Reversal. Here's to reversals of fortune. Passageway. Hidden passageways built so the lords of Winterfell could escape. Asshole. Hides his cock in his own asshole. Coughing. His coughing. His whimpering. Dangle. His eye was dangling out of the damn socket. Extinguish. His flame has been extinguished. Junk. His goods were junk except for one wooden doll. Pop. His lady of the hour pops a tiny spoon of that into his mouth. Proclivity. His proclivities were the worst kept secret at court. Untouched. His servants often find his food in the hall left untouched. Shipboard. His shipboard inventory. Inventory. His shipboard inventory. Purity. His sins don't erase that purity. Distinctive. Very distinctive faces. Boulder. Boulders ready. Horrid. Horrid. Jabber. Hours spent jabbering about backstabbings. Available. It's available. Starvation. How do I make starvation scream? Proceed. How do we proceed? Subdue. How does one manage to subdue such an uncommonly large person? Clam. How much for your little clam? Parry. How to parry. Sweat. How you climbed all those steps without breaking a sweat. Pomposity. How's that for pomposity? Humor. Humor isn't my strength. Industry. I admire your industry. Educate. I am educating my nephew. Instrument. I am merely an instrument of the institution I represent. Ruffian. Challenge me. Ruffian. Fulfill. You fulfilled your oath. Bake. I baked some brown bread for the innkeep. Inordinate. I began to spend inordinate amounts of time watching him. Advantageous. I believe that an advantageous agreement. Greasy. I bet his hair is greasier than Joffrey's cond. Clip. I brush her hair and clipped her nails. Breaking. I can hear the sound of a baron's skull breaking. Fraud. I can smell a fraud from a mile away.